everyone. This is Dr. Colleen Meyer with Meyer and Mintz. We're presenting with today. We have Angel on Fearless in Pink. Angel, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, so my name is Angel Guerra-Ghagolla, and I am a director of risk for a national bakery, as well as a CEO of a small company called Beauty and Beast in Business.
So tell us a little bit about Beauty and Beast in Business. And so what do you do? What does your company do? Tell us all about it.
So I have created a quarterly online publication, and I recognize that there were a lot of women and just business owners really during the COVID time who haven't had a chance to kind of get in front of some new people, network, meet a new market. And I thought, why not grab some amazing authors, put in some, beauty tips, and create advertisement opportunity for some businesses who actually have a service or a product that business women can use, or a businesswoman who's trying to sell those products. In addition, I'll be having two events in 2020. My first one is April 22nd, which is virtual. We've already maxed out at 100 women, so I'm really excited about that. And the next one, probably at the end of the year, will be in person. I'm also creating some virtual, I would say, workshops for young people that are really going to be teaching them life skills, teaching them self-branding. It's really difficult when you're going from high school or newly going from college into the business world and the corporate world, and they don't really recognize the power of networking or creating their own personal brand, thinking that I'm just an employee and I don't own a company. Well, we really want to recognize that even as a person, we are a brand. We have to sell ourselves in the corporate world for our expertise, for our experience. We want to make sure that we show up well. So some of those courses are really going to be kind of directed towards young people and kind of help them grow naturally and give them some skills, some resources and tools that they need to be extremely successful in the corporate world.
It's amazing. It seems like you have a heart for giving, a servant leader. So that's amazing. So what made you, let's go back to an earlier time with Angel and tell us, what made you decide that you were going to step out and you wanted to create a business that's going to connect women. It's going to help young people find their identity and find their way. When did that first start for you?
I've always wanted to kind of have a business or a nonprofit of my own. I really didn't believe I could actually do it until just a few years ago. And about 3 years ago, I was mentoring some women within my industry. And I was getting connected with a lot of other women who had questions about just regular career things. And so I thought, why not put on these events that I can bring in a financial advisor, an attorney, bring in these other women who have expertise to help us, I like to say, navigate risk and cultivate life. And so we don't want to be risk adverse. And I think that that's really what the issue is right now. Over the last few years, we've seen people say, you either want to just get in front of it and do it all and risk it all, or some people who are like, no, we want to avoid that. And the problem is, if you completely avoid risk, you don't go anywhere. If you don't recognize the risk and you jump head first, well, sometimes things don't turn out so nicely. And so being able to see what our risks are in 401k and our retirement, what is our risk as we ask for, let's say, a promotion or a bonus from our job? What are these risks in our careers, our life every day? And so I started to recognize that I wasn't the only one who had these questions. And our first event, we had nearly 40 women. In 2019 and 2018, over about 14 months, we had 11 events that ranged from 40 to 250 people throughout California. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. I love it. You feed off of the people because I believe in sisterhood. And so, I would always open up the event saying, this is a safe place. This is a place where we want to support one another. We want to be vulnerable. We want to ask questions so that we can learn and grow. And I had this one thing which I would give for every event a bracelet charm to all our attendees. And
Mm.
every event had a different bracelet charm. And it was really neat towards the end, because I would say, well, have you been to our prior events? And, these women would have 3 or 4 bracelet charms. And,
Mm.
it was really amazing. But when COVID hit, well, that kind of put an end to our in-person events. And at the same time, I had a nonprofit, and I was really working with children here in the Inland Empire, providing new clothes, school supplies. I remember what it was like to grow up, and whether it was me or whether it was the people around me who may not have had what they needed for necessities. And
Mm.
I promised myself that one day I would be able to give back. And so that's really what this whole thing is about. And as I transitioned during COVID from my prior businesses into beauty and beast and business, I thought, why not just grab those 2 things that I love, which is supporting and empowering women, as well
Mhm.
as supporting and empowering young people and children, and put those 2 things together.
I find that amazing that you're doing that. And, there's such a need. It's interesting that you talk about risk because when I was doing my dissertation and I was studying in women business owners in general, I found that the studies showed that women tend to be more risk, that we want to stay away from it more than our male counterparts. We have more of a fear of failure than our male counterparts. So an example would be like women are not all women. We can't lump everybody in the same box,
Mhm.
but a lot of women that are thinking about going into business or starting out a business, they're more likely to use a credit card or borrow money from mom or dad or family members or use their savings or 401k. You know, they're more likely to do that than go out and get a loan. Because I think when you get a loan for a lot of women, not all, but a lot of women, that becomes real. And you have to pay that back. And it becomes, okay, what if I fail? Then I'm stuck with this debt. So they become more risk averse. They don't want to deal with the risk. If there's a risk, they're going to step back. And it's interesting. And I think a lot of that comes down to maybe like self-efficacy or self-esteem. And, maybe some of the challenges that we might have faced growing up in the society and or in our family. Tell me what you think about that. And what do you think causes that in some women?
So I've talked to hundreds of women, and one of
Mhm.
the things that I love to do is really have that communication and that talk and find out who they are and why they do things or don't do things. But I'm
Mhm.
also an avid reader, and I love to research as well. And so what I've seen is there's a pattern. And first, let's really start about our community and our culture, right?
Mhm.
Young girls are raised, not so much now, but when I was growing up and even
Mhm.
before, there's this thought of we're going to put them in ballet, and we don't want them jumping off walls, and we don't. So it's like, be careful, don't skin your knees, sit right here, be a good girl, be quiet, like behave. And when sometimes we get to a point where they're trying to speak their minds, they're trying to get things through, and again they're told to be quiet or behave.
Mhm.
And that becomes ingrained, because then what happens is, as we get older, we think, well, if we're speaking our truth, or we're speaking up, or we may be asking questions that other people aren't comfortable answering, it becomes as if we are the bad person, or we are doing something we're not supposed to do. And that's where a lot of the risk aversion comes from.
Mhm.
And that just comes, I mean, I remember in school asking questions, and if I didn't understand, I would ask, and I would ask again. And I was told, you just got to follow along. And so that would then quiet me down. And other things are, the thought process of, before, well, we raise, or many people raise their kids, their young women, thinking, well, you're going to get married, you're going to have a family, the fairy tales of Prince Charming is going to come, and when
Mhm.
that happens, you hold down your home, and that's pretty much all you have to do. Well, that's not real life. And
Mhm.
what happens is, we don't know how to handle it. We start to experience things, and we're bringing along all of that luggage of that culture, or
Mhm.
that training that has been happening over time. And so when I really first started talking about risk, I thought about risk management in the industry. That's kind of what I did. But I realized that wasn't it. As I talked to women, or I talked to people in general, especially young people, it was the fear of, you're right, the fear of failing something. What happens if I fail? Then I'm not good enough. And in society, you know, that thought process is you got to go for the gold and you have to be the best and you have to, well, you know, the problem is you can't be the best and you can't go for the gold if you're not taking those little steps. You know, those, let's say NBA players or those NFL players, they didn't get to be there by not, you know, getting hit and striking out and, you know, having those failures, but they continue to move forward. The other issue is that we see, we raise our young boys to do that, right? So we're like, you know, persevere, keep going, rub some dirt on that knee. And so those kind of cultures revolve around how we do that. And then that becomes their expertise. When they get into the business world, they can go and ask for a raise and they can know 40% of a job. And they're like, yeah, I deserve that raise because I know 40% of this job, or I deserve that job. I'm going to apply for it because I know these things. Whereas in a woman, we're like, well, we know 80%, but you know, they're going to question me about that 20%. And I don't know that. And so I'm not going to apply for that job. And really, it's important to understand what risk is. And so as I talk to people and I mentor, coach, and teach people about risk, I tell them, you understand what risk is. Risk is knowing that you may lose something to gain something. And we have a risk in everything that we do, from our jobs to when we get married, to raising our kids, to going to the grocery store, you name it. There's always two sides of that. But when we're looking at those large things, like whether we're going to go to college or what are we going to major in, what is our career going to be? You look at it, and I always tell them, sit down with a piece of paper and say, okay, here's these options that I have, or these thoughts that I have. Now, each one of those, let's say you have 3, there's also 2 ways to get there at the minimum. If you take route A, this is the probable cause, or this is the probable outcome. If you take route B, this is the probable outcome. And what makes it different? Is it money? Is it time? Is it work? It's the same thing for every option. And so now you look and you're like, okay, yes, it's risky, but I know, or I can tell each avenue I need to take, what the work is to get to that, what I may lose, what I may gain, what the probable outcome is going to be. And that then allows you to have a better idea of, okay, I think this is the best route for me right now, and this is probably going to happen. Now, if something comes out of the blue and it whacks you one, you may have to pivot. But once you learn that you can find your options, you can determine the avenues to get there and the steps to get there and what the probable outcome is. No matter what comes your way, you can pivot and do the same thing. And you pivot the other way and you do the same thing. And that's really what success is made out of.
You know, I find it interesting, like you were talking about with, you know, childhood and, you know, how we're raised. And you look at, I find this fascinating because when I was working on my dissertation on women business owners and we were looking at risk, what I found is, you know, a lot of young girls, now when I say young girls, I'm going to say below, let's say 11 and below, and roughly 11 and below. And, you know, they don't have that fear of failure like adult women. You know, my granddaughter, she would go out and she would ride dirt bikes. And she'd be the only little girl out there on a dirt bike, racing all these boys and winning her little, standing up there with her trophies and winning. And I was thinking about that, but when do little girls, and she's not the only one, you know, the little girls are out playing with boys in sports, and then at a certain point, about 11 or 12, I don't know if it's puberty or if it's what it is, but all of a sudden they lose their self-esteem, you know, and then it becomes, well, I can't do that. Well, I can't, you know, you know, when do they don't even think, when they're little children, they don't think twice about getting on a bike or playing baseball or doing whatever against another little boy. So what I find is so interesting at that age gap, that there's that shift, and that's when I think we start losing our confidence. And I think going back, as little girls are growing up, you know, if a little boy gets out there and he's like, hey, they're going to say, oh my God, he's got leadership skills. Oh, he's a leader. right? If a little girl goes up there, they're going to say, oh, you're being a brat, or even worse, the other B word, you're being a little B word, you know? And it's like, and it reminds me of the book Sheryl Sandberg wrote called Lean In. When you're in a corporate environment, a corporate boardroom, women tend to lean back where men tend to lean in. And I think that's what happens. There's that shift where somehow girls are starting to lean back.
It's a comprehension. They get to puberty, they get to an age where, you know, things get to be said, they see things. There's a bigger comprehension of who they are, how they fit into their surroundings, how they fit into a specific group, a clique, let's say. Sometimes they want to fit into a specific one, and that means becoming or creating themselves into what it is that, you know, fits that kind of mold. And so not only that, you know, honestly, I remember being told by a teacher when I was in high school that I would be nothing more than the product of my surroundings. And, you know, you think about how they can say something like that to a young person, but that stuck with me for a very long time. And I remember, you know, other little girls or even teenagers whose parents were like, you know, you can't afford to go to college, so you're going to get a job, and, you know, you get that job, you're going to get married, and that's what your focus is. So, you know, there's just the focus has changed. And we see that now. I have a 23-year-old daughter. I have a 15-year-old daughter. And, you know, I see as they've grown older, them go through exactly what you said, go from, you know, just pushing the limits to kind of leaning back a little bit. And so through these ages, through, you know, high school and right after high school, I've really taken time to kind of help them and support them and find out, you know, what is going on? How do we make you feel confident? And again, a lot of that has to go with knowledge. And that's a big thing. And I don't care if you go to college or you're picking up knowledge from your library and reading a book or reading blogs or listening. But when we learn something, when we know something, we then have the confidence to go in front of people and say, oh, I get this. I understand this. I know this. When we don't have that knowledge, we don't speak up as much. And not only that, it's finding our voice. So
I love that.
yeah, what I notice is that this generation, they seem to find their voices a little bit earlier than we did. I did not find my voice until I was nearly, I would say 40, my 40th birthday. I kind of just dug my heels in and I said, you know what? No, it's time. Like, it's time to find your voice. And what are you going to do with it? And so now it's really important for me to amplify the voices of other women, which is part of this publication and what I do as well, because I want those women who maybe don't have the confidence to speak up, be able to put that in writing so that we can amplify that, or for them to talk to me and give me their stories so that we can tell that story, so that all these other young women or women of every age who might connect with that say, oh, well, she's doing that, I can do that as well. Let's support one another. And, you know, we talked about the dreaded bees, and that's really where I came up with Beauty and Beast in Business. So when I thought about this slogan and this brand and this, you know, trademark for my company, it was really the thought that women for generations have fit into two boxes, and that's the face, that's the beauty. Oh, she's so cute, but she's probably not that smart. And
oh my God, that is so true.
The other one is the beast. She's too aggressive. You know, nobody wants to work under her because, you know, she just brings the hammer down. Well, it's multiple things that go into that, because first it is maybe for the face where we don't have that confidence. And so it's that we don't have that strength to speak up, or we haven't figured out how to navigate that yet, right? And so it's not that we don't have the knowledge, it's just that we're not sure how to utilize our voices. And if we're in the other side, it's not that we are beastly and aggressive, it's that we do know what we're doing and we expect that these things are going to be done right. And as a manager, in order to gain the respect, you know, we are telling people this is what needs to be done. And unfortunately, it may not be taken that way. Or I've also seen where we become, I would say we take on what the culture and what the world thinks about as masculine traits, which is, the timeliness and all of these things. And so those traits, people look at them and they go, oh, those are manly traits. And that means
That's
that
right.
you're being this and you're being that. And so Beauty and Beast in Business was really an evolution about finding that balance. How do we recognize that we can have, and not just outer beauty, I'm talking about inner beauty, our souls, our hearts, our minds, how we treat other people, how we support and we give. That is beauty. And that beast, it's okay to have strength. It's okay
right.
to have perseverance. It's okay to have a voice and to utilize it and to advocate. So how do we find that balance between both? And it's not always 50-50. And not every, once we find it, maybe this job or this discussion includes 60-40, but then you go into another event or another location or another job and you got to kind of switch those around because
right.
yeah. And so it's finding that. And for me, it's really telling women and telling young girls, it's okay. It's okay to be both. You have every opportunity to do both. We want to be both. And your balance is not my balance, and that's okay.
That is okay. This, when I came up with Fearless and Pink, my daughter's a cultural anthropologist and a feminist, and she's like, Mom, ugh, pink. And and I'm like, no, wait, hear me out. But it's, to me, like you were saying, to me, it was, in order to be strong, we had to be masculine. And I grew up, not grew up, when I was first getting into business, we had the big, shoulder pads and under, our jacket. Yeah, thank you for that, Angel. and anyway, but I thought about it and I'm like, no, we can still be strong without being masculine. We can still be strong in our femalehood, in our womanhood. We don't have to be, to be male-ish or male traits in order to be fearless. We can be fearless as in our own skins as a female. And that's what I was trying to say. And she was like, okay, Mom. But at first, when I threw the pink out there, she's like, oh, you're creating that, like a stereotype. But I was trying to say, no, I want to use it as a representation of that we can be fearless as females.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, very similar to, what you're saying. It's okay for us. And I just, Angel, you're going and talking to girls and spending time with them and telling them, hey, you can be this beauty and beast at some point, and they're going to go up and down based on what situation you're in. But how do we get it into, we can tell them, but it has to go from here to the heart.
And I think that a lot of it, what I see is you go to social media, and social media has this portrayal or this idea of, what success means, and what specific things you're supposed to be in order to be successful, and who you're supposed to be. And so what we see is young girls, everybody wants to be accepted, everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants somebody to hit that like button on their social media, right? But what is it for? And so what they've been shown and what they've been told over and over and over again is, they see Jenners or whoever, and you're supposed to look like this, and you get 1,000 likes. Yeah, you get 1,000 likes when you do these things, and whatever it may be. And so we have to continue as women, as even male counterparts. Like I tell my husband all the time, like, if you have to be able to instill in our children and our daughters, the ability to grow, the ability to speak up, the ability to stand their ground and advocate for themselves and advocate for others. And if most of society is not saying that, that's where it becomes very hard, because they're being jaded early on. And so it takes us to go and talk to them and to give our time and to donate our time to work and mentor and, create programs that show them something else. And that's really what's important. We talk about the business world and we see these huge CEOs, whether it's PepsiCo or it's whatever, and we're seeing these women, and we're seeing women of color, and we're seeing cross-sectional women getting into these great places, but nobody shows all the hard work. Nobody shows
Thank you.
all the times they've fallen and every time they've been stopped and all the barriers they've had to go around and underneath and you name it. They only see that success. And therefore people go, oh, I can't attain that. Like they're the CEO of PepsiCo or they're the CEO of whatever this large company is. I'm just a young girl, or I'm just a woman who came from this tiny town and I don't have any money, so there's no way I can accomplish that, right? We're not giving, or society doesn't give enough steps. How do we get there? The first step is goal setting, and then we set our goals and we track them. And then, we recognize what needs to come next, and we get involved with organizations or women on a next level so that we're mentored, and we read books, and so these are the steps that we need to get so that that is attainable. That's what we have to show our young people.
And, and I had a friend of mine, she wrote a dissertation on women in STEM, and she actually, I guess, her target was high school girls and getting them into STEM, and she was studying them. And I think that we need to get away too from the, you were talking about, everybody wants to be accepted and loved. And, our girls, because of, our Hollywood type society, and, we're very youth and beauty focused in our country, we don't celebrate, woman. If a woman girl wants to be popular and have all these likes, she's gonna do, I'm gonna do this all up, right? But we need to make it okay for them too, to get, feel strong and powerful, getting into sciences and math and those technology, because women are smart and they can do that.
Yeah, it's the knowledge, and it's making it, I love to see all these women that are out there right now making a difference. I love to see, that's why it's important that my publication includes women from across the US, and we have attorneys, and we have, CEOs, and we have women in different realms of business. And I even have my 15-year-old who's writing a one-page article, and she has what we call Leilani's list that talks about different things. The first publication, really, she listed 10 women and young girls who are making a change in the world. And the publication that just came out April 1st was 3 things that high schools should teach young people. And it was life skills.
I love that.
It was financial empowerment. It was health, personal health. And it's really, amazing to me that, she has these ideas. And she's like, well, I said, write it down. I'll help you edit this. Like, it doesn't have to be extreme, but I want you to have a page. I want you to have a voice. So I want to be able to teach her how to do that. And she's connecting with other young girls. Sometimes I hear her on the phone, or they're FaceTiming each other. And recently, we were talking about breast cancer. And so she started talking about self-exams, and all of her friends who are all in high school, they were like, I don't even know what that is. What's a self-exam? Why would you, So here she is on, FaceTime, teaching them what that is. And, over her t-shirt showing, and this is where, and under your arm, and, this is what you're looking for. And to me, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's amazing, because how many lives can be saved like that if we have other girls standing up and teaching girls their own age, and we're teaching these girls how to do that, how to share the information. And the other thing I really, really teach is I teach sisterhood. So, women can be hard on women. It's not always, people say, oh, it's just always the men and women and this and that. No, to me, it's inclusive. everybody on any side, any gender, anything, we have good, we have bad, we have harsh, we have, all of these things, and we have bullies. And sometimes women can be harsh on women, and it's for many different ways, many different things, whether they say it, whether they, reject them to hire them, or whatever it may be. And that's because so many times we've been told, oh, you have to have a seat at the table. Well, when people say a seat at the table, now as women, we see one seat. We see a table with 15 chairs, but we're just looking at that one seat, because guess what? We have to fill that one seat with a woman. And now we're all gathered at that company, and everybody is pushing and pulling and fighting to get that one seat. So my thought process and what I teach is there's not one seat, there's 15 seats. And so when you take that one seat at the table, let's turn back to our sisters and say, okay, you know what? There's 14 other seats here. You deserve a seat. How are we going to work you through the process so that you get one? How are we going to mentor you? How are we going to provide you resources? So we don't want to look at our sisters as competition. We want to look at our sisters as women who we can support and they can support us. So when we teach our young girls that mindset as well, we're trying to avoid the bullying. We're trying to avoid this thought process that one is better than the other for whatever they look like, or what they know, or where they came from, or how much money do they have, right? So I really think it's important, and those are what I speak. I speak from the heart, and I tell people, whether you meet me in the boardroom or you meet me at the beach, you meet the same person. And I think that is also very important.
You know what? You're amazing.
Thank
You
you.
really are. And it sounds like, you're doing a great job raising your girls to be strong. And that's amazing too. If someone's watching this or listening to this and they want to get a hold of you, can you tell us a little bit about how they can do that? And we'll post it on the Facebook in the comments, and then on the podcast, and on YouTube, we'll put it inside the information portion of it. But go ahead and share right now how they can get a hold of you.
So you go to www.beautyandbeastinbusiness. There's no beautyandbeastinbusiness.com. And from there, you have a link to my LinkedIn. You can send me an email at angel@beautyandbeastinbusiness.com. I have an Instagram page as well as a Facebook. So pretty much any social media, you should be able to contact me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming on, Angel. It was really a insightful, interesting conversation. And I thank you and I appreciate you for that very much.
Thank you so much for having me.